Ahoj úžasňáci, já vás po dlouhé době zase vítám u podcastu, ve kterém vám budu povídat o své cestě do Barcelony. Dopředu předesílám, že celý podcast bude v angličtině, ale pokusím se mluvit pomalu a zjednodušeně, aby i ne ti příliš pokročilí z vás byli schopni se mnou udržovat tempo a vychutnat si možná jednu z jejich prvních oficiálních nahrávek v angličtině. Nicméně, pokud je pro vás samotný poslech stále velké sousto, tak vám doporučuji koukat se na YouTube, kde si můžete zapnout anglické titulky a dokonce si tam můžete zapnout i dvojazyčné titulky. Návod, jak to udělat, najdete v popisku tohoto podcastu anebo videa, záleží kde posloucháte. Ale teď už pojďme na to. So, let's switch to English now. As I already told you, I'm gonna be telling you about my trip to Barcelona. Before I start, I would just like to make sure that you all understand that I'm not a very organized person when it comes to these single episodes of podcasts, and it's quite difficult to be telling a story when there is nobody sitting in front of me and having a conversation with me. To be honest, I've made quite a few notes, so I hope that at least that will help me to keep the structure of it. But I just wanted to make this short disclaimer that I'm not perfect, and I would really like you to imagine that you are sitting with me in a cafe as my friend and you're just listening to my ramble about all the things that have happened to us. Where to begin? I'm just gonna start with who I went with, and this time I didn't go on holiday with my husband, but with a very dear friend of mine, Daya. Daya is also a head teacher or head lecturer in my project Výuka AI online, and she's literally my right hand, and I cannot imagine where this project would be without her. And since we live quite far away from each other, we thought that having some time together and being able to bond much more than just over voice messages, which we send to each other literally every day, multiple times a day. So we decided we would go for a holiday together for a few days, maybe for a prolonged weekend. And our original, I'm sorry, I have to change position. And the original plan was to go to Istanbul. And we actually changed that plan due to terrorist attacks that happened there, I don't know, a few days after we kind of agreed that both of us would like to go to Istanbul. So after that I was like, no way, Daya, I'm going to Istanbul without a man. So two quite little girls wouldn't be the best idea going to Turkey, but that's just my opinion. I've never been there, but I probably wouldn't feel safe there. So I also have to give shout out to a profile, Nicole na cestách. I don't know if you know her. If you don't, just start following her on Instagram. She also has her own hero, which I actually subscribed to. And when we finally decided with Daya that we would go to Barcelona, I texted her and she found a cheap flight for us, and she even found a really cheap hotel for us. And it was the cheapest I could find anywhere, really. It wasn't cheap, let me tell you, but from the offer of hotels and Airbnbs in Barcelona, it was cheap. To be honest, I was shocked at how expensive Barcelona is. So I don't know, but if you want to travel on a budget, I would probably choose a different city. I don't know, I'm not a low-cost traveler, but from the destinations I've been to already, Barcelona definitely wasn't the cheapest, but to be honest, I didn't mind at all. So, we got the flight tickets, we got the hotel room, and we were ready to go. We actually planned this trip in March, and our holiday was scheduled for the 14th of July until the 18th of July. So it was basically like 3 full days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Friday was for the travels, and Tuesday was for the travels as well. What I have to tell you as well right in the beginning, that Dia and I, we are this kind of people that tend to experience a lot of embarrassing situations. Sometimes I feel we are doomed, and our list of faux pas that happened to us is infinite. but you will see. And also, let me tell you that I had to limit the amount of these embarrassing stories, because if I were to tell you all of them, it would be a podcast for 2 hours, and I'm not willing to sit here for 2 hours, and I believe you're not willing to listen to me for 2 hours. So I'm just gonna start with the Friday, which was our departure day. Our original plan was to meet at 7 p.m. at the main train station, where my husband would pick us up and would take us to the airport. I bought a train that would be in Prague at 6, and I bought a train that would be in Prague like 5 to 7. And I was really skeptical about that, because I have bad experience with trains, and they are always delayed. So I didn't feel good about Dia relying on the train not being late, not even by a minute. So I tried to talk her into getting a train that was supposed to arrive 2 hours earlier, but that would mean she would have to wait for 1 hour in Prague for me until I arrive. And she decided to buy a bus instead that was supposed to arrive in Prague at 6 p.m. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Actually, at 4 p.m., which was the time when I was still at home, I was actually jumping on my trampoline. Don't laugh. But at that exact time, Dia called me she called me crying her eyes out that the bus had a little accident, and that its tire exploded, and that she's just like standing at the side of a highway, and she doesn't know what to do, because they told her that like help would come, but probably in like 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and it wouldn't even be another bus, it would just be a repairman, and they would have to fix the tire first, and then they would go. So when she told me that, we knew it wasn't an option to wait for the repairman, because if we did wait, we would definitely 100% miss the plane. So I was trying to remain calm so that I would also help to calm her down a bit. But it was hard, to be honest. I was panicking also, but I tried not to show it off. And Dia is amazing, because she jumped in a car. Yeah, there was this girl, and somebody came to pick her up, and she saw them. So she really, she just ran towards the car, and she talked them into taking her to wherever they were going, and they were actually going to Jihlava. I hope I'm not giving you false information, because I'm really terrible at remembering names of cities, but I think it was Jihlava. And she managed to get from Jihlava to Prague by bus, by Flixbus really. And she only arrived like 45 minutes later, the time we agreed on. So it was all right, but still, it was a bit stressful, but luckily or not our husband, but my husband took us to the airport, and we quickly went, or actually it wasn't quick, but there was a few fuck-ups on the way from the entrance door to the boarding platform or whatever, but I'm not gonna mention all of that because it would take forever. We actually landed at exactly 0.00, that means at midnight, in Spain, so on Saturday actually, and it was really hard to arrive this late because I normally go to bed at 10, and now it was already 2 hours past my bedtime and I still needed to function and focus and get to our hotel. Luckily, I managed to persuade Daya to get a taxi, so at least we didn't have to deal with trying to find our way in public transport to our hotel, because I am afraid that with our luck, we would arrive at the hotel at 6 a.m. or so, 6 hours later after our arrival. And there was this funny moment that I was actually expecting a taxi driver holding a sign with my name, because that's what Booking told me. We actually ordered the taxi over Booking, and their instructions were that we would find the taxi driver behind the baggage claim, I would say, or so, yeah, and that he would hold a sign with our names. So we were both scanning the room, and Daya was telling me something, but I didn't really pay a lot of attention to her because I was really focused on trying to find a taxi driver holding our sign, but there was not such person. And there was this moment when Daya told me, Eliška, I think this guy is staring at us. And I didn't hear her, or I didn't know that, I didn't realize she was telling me that. I was in my zone. And then literally she told me, Eliška, I think he is calling you. And again, I didn't hear her. So 2 seconds later, I pull a phone out of my pocket and I'm like, somebody's calling me. and I was just looking at me like, wow, no shit, Sherlock. And this guy, the taxi driver, was literally standing 1 meter away from me, looking at me as I'm picking up the phone, even though he's standing right there. So that was crazy. And another faux pas was that he was Spanish. I could tell because his name was Antonio, but he talked to us in English. But I was really motivated to practice my Spanish, so I wanted him to speak in Spanish. And so he always asked a question and I responded in Spanish. And I was really, I was not going to stop speaking Spanish because I really wanted to persuade him to speak Spanish to me back. And after 3 exchanges, he finally started speaking in Spanish, and he started with this long monologue, and to be honest, I didn't understand him. So when he finished with a question that I also didn't understand, and he gave me this look expecting me to answer, and I was like, bueno, vale. And I didn't respond anyhow, and from that point it was quiet in that taxi because I didn't know what to tell him, and I was a bit ashamed and shy, but it was funny, poor guy. Anyway, we arrived at the hotel and we checked in, the usual process. You hand them your IDs, and they they mark down the info from it, and they give you the keys, or in our case the cards, to our room. And we got to our room. It was on the 3rd floor, and let me tell you, the beds, it was the worst. I barely slept. during the whole holiday. It's already Friday. We returned on Tuesday, and I still feel so tired. I feel like a walking dead because this huge sleep deficit has taken a toll on me, and it was mainly because of the beds and because of the pillows and because of the thin walls. We could hear everything the other people in those rooms were doing, and especially their phones. So I think the first night I got like 3 hours of sleep, the second like 4 hours, the fifth like 5 hours, and that was it. Anyway, in the morning, we went down to get a breakfast, which was actually included in in the price. And when we were going down there, we stopped by at the reception, and there was a guy, and he asked like, "Are you from the room A, blah blah blah?" And we said yes, and he said, "Wow, Eliška, I have your ID." And like I didn't know, I had no idea. I had lost my ID literally few hours after arriving in Spain. And what's funny about it is that on the plane I was telling Daya that I'm also taking my passport because I heard that Barcelona is full of criminals, and I'm afraid they would steal my ID, and I don't want to get stuck in Barcelona without ID and not being able to get home. And then what I do, I lose it. I lose the ID like literally 2 hours after we arrived. Like that's so typical of me. Anyway, the breakfasts were terrible. I didn't really like anything I got, so I always wanted to get a white yogurt with some fruit and with a cake that I had brought from home actually. And like another funny faux pas is that for some reason I thought that I can only get one white yogurt, or like one yogurt in general, because you just couldn't grab it on your own. There was a lady and you had to ask her to give it to you. I guess this was because they wanted to prevent like students or just residents of this hotel, or it was actually a college for students, so they wanted to prevent them from stealing the food and eating it for a snack. So they had to somehow limit the amount of food you take. And I thought for some reason, without asking anybody, that I was only able to get one yogurt. So I always persuaded Daya to ask for one white yogurt as well for me, because she's a vegan, so she wouldn't eat it. So it was always me. I asked for a white yogurt. Daya right after me asked for a white yogurt, and that was my breakfast. And funny thing is that on the last day, I went for a breakfast alone because I woke up earlier than Daya and I was hungry, so I wanted to get breakfast. So this time I couldn't rely on Daya getting the yogurt for me. So I was all sweaty and I was trying to persuade myself to ask for the second yogurt and just kind of come to terms with the fact that they could say no to me, which is hard for me as a people pleaser. I generally hate hearing no's or even saying no's. And actually the lady just gave me white yogurts. She didn't even blink an eye. So all these processes were completely unnecessary, because I could have just asked for it myself and I didn't have to annoy Daya with it. And another funny thing is that I always take fluff drops with me. Fluff drops, though, this is it's a form of sweetener with caramel flavor, but it's really, really sweet. And I thought that it's a white yogurt without sugar, and I didn't even tasted it. I just immediately put the caramel fluff drops in it, and it was always so sweet that it was basically disgusting, but I wanted to eat it. And every morning I told myself like, why did I put so much sweetener again in it? And why am I doing this? And I always told myself that I wouldn't do it the next day, and I did it anyway. And you know what? I actually found out that the yogurt was already sweetened and it was sweet as hell. And do you know how I found out? Because I forgot fluff drops in our room on our last day, and that's how I found out. So I was actually making an already over-sweetened yogurt sweeter than it was. So that's another example of my bad luck. Anyway, on our first day, on Saturday, we decided we would take a walk around the area where we were staying. And we found this park, which was actually called Güell, which was surprising because if you want to go to Barcelona, I definitely recommend you going to Park Güell, but be careful, there are two, which I didn't know, and that's the reason another fuck-up happened, and I'm gonna tell you a bit later. But if you want to get to the most famous Park Güell, which is definitely worth visiting, you have to get a ticket in advance unless you just can't get in. I think it costs maybe 15 euros or something, and you basically book a visit for a specific time, for example, for 9 a.m. or 9:30 or 10 a.m. and so on. So go to a website, Park Güell reservations, and you can reserve it there. And we actually had our reservation for Sunday, which was tomorrow, because now I'm talking about Saturday. So I'm gonna go back to that a bit later. So we took a walk. We took a lot of photos. We were excited about being on holiday, being in Barcelona. We didn't live far from the center. It was 1 hour on foot, but still we didn't live exactly in the center, so therefore there weren't many people, which I definitely recommend to everybody, because the center was so crowded that I almost had a panic attack. But the place where we were staying was perfect, and I loved it there. So we went to Lidl, we bought food for the rest of the holiday, for lunches especially, and for some snacks, because we decided we would eat out for dinners. And after our lunch, which we bought at Lidl, so I got some seafood with bread, and then we went to a swimming pool, which was luckily part of our hotel, and we had a nice swim there, and it was so hot outside that having a swim was a perfect activity to do. And in the afternoon we went for a shisha to 4 Elements, and if you love shisha, definitely Google 4 Elements. It was the best shisha I've ever had. They also make cocktails, but they were really expensive. But the shisha was alright, and I'm gonna repeat myself, it was the best shisha of my life. And after that we got an ice cream, which was again the best ice cream of my life. I got pistachio and coconut flavors, and yeah, I still dream of it. I wish I could have it at home, but I'm afraid I would be obese if I did, because I would eat it for breakfast, for dinner, for snacks, for everything. And it was very close to the shisha place, the 4 Elements. And that was basically it for the first day. The next day is when another fuck up happened. So what we would do when we went for breakfast, we would just take our phones out and we would plan out the day. But as I already said, we had already booked the tickets to Park Güell, so it was clear that we were going to go to Park Güell at 9 a.m. And maybe 2 days before this moment, I checked the map, and I swear I saw it was only 15 minutes away from our hotel. But later I found out that it wasn't the Park Güell we were actually supposed to go to, but it was the first little park that we went to on our first day. But it was a huge problem because we actually counted with the fact that it would only take us 15 minutes on foot. And luckily I found out at like 8 a.m. that it's not 15 minutes, but it's actually 47 minutes, which is a huge difference when it's already 8 a.m. and you're supposed to be there at 9 a.m. So Daya was like, let's walk or let's take the public transport. And I was really against it because at that moment, we hadn't even drunk our coffees, we hadn't eaten anything, and I wanted to take a shower also after the breakfast, and I knew that if we decided to go on foot or take the public transport, I wouldn't have time for all of that, and basically my whole day would be ruined, and I'm not kidding. I'm a really spoiled person. So I managed to persuade Daya to get an Uber, and now I'm gonna quote myself because this is exactly what I said. Daya, let's take an Uber. I don't want to stress out this morning. I want to just like casually enjoy my breakfast, take a shower, and take it easy. Well, let me tell you, it was far from taken easy because at 8:40 I started trying to get an Uber, but no Uber was in that area, so all the drivers were basically like refusing us left and right. So I tried to download Bolt app and it was the same case, and there were no taxis around, so we were running around our flat, around our hotel like headless chickens, and we were hoping for the best, but it was already late. It was already like 9:10 when finally an Uber accepted our inquiry, and we waited for him until 9:15 when he finally arrived. And meanwhile we found out that you can get to the park actually 30 minutes past your reservation, which already it was 9:15, and by car it took 14 minutes to that park. So we were still like stressed and shocked, but kind of relieved that we are at least in an Uber, because until then we spent literally 40 minutes, almost 40 minutes like trying to get one. And we arrived at exactly 9:29 at Park Güell, so they actually let us in. But it was the most stressful morning ever. It was all worth it though, because the park was amazing, and if you're planning to go to Barcelona, I would 100% recommend you go to this park, but please don't forget to make reservation, and beware that there might be 2 parks Güell, so please check the map out in advance and be better at managing your location and your time than we were. But I am so glad it had a happy ending, because I cannot imagine how we would feel if we didn't manage to get into the park. We wouldn't be able to buy any other tickets, so wow. We were super lucky and unlucky at the same time. It was really a blessing in disguise. Anyway, the walk in this park took us, I don't know, an hour and a half, and after that we were pretty tired. No shit, since we spent our morning running around. our hotel room and then walking around the park, which is quite uphill, by the way. And on our way back, we decided we would just walk home. It was a 15-minute long walk, and we wanted to stop by for a coffee on the way back. And the main reason for getting a coffee really was to go to a place where I could use the restroom because I really needed to use the toilet. And like we were walking down a nice street, and suddenly Daya drags me into a cafe screaming like, "They have a really cheap coffee, Eliška." And before I know it, we are there. The only guy that's of course probably the owner of the smallest shop I've seen. He immediately takes our order, so this whole thing happens in like 30 seconds. And after I finally like sit down, I realized that this place might not have any toilets because it was so small and it felt a bit dirty, you know? So it didn't look like the typical place where would you expect to go to a toilet. And I was panicking a bit because, you know, you cannot just go to a restaurant or a cafe without buying a drink or anything and just using their restroom. You can't do that. But Daya told me that she's not going to another restaurant, that she's only gonna get this coffee. So I was panicking even more because at that moment I couldn't imagine walking for 50 minutes back home after drinking a coffee. That's like, that felt impossible. So when the guy came, I basically screamed at him, in Spanish, of course. And what I said wasn't something I wanted to say. Of course, I wanted to ask, where is the restroom? But instead, I asked, where's the washing machine? The guy looked at me, I looked at him. I didn't realize I made a mistake. And then he suddenly says, you mean servicios? And I said, yeah, that's what I mean. Actually, I said lavadora. But lavadora is a washing machine. So that was a funny faux pas in Spanish. But luckily there were toilets, but they were so smelly and so dirty that it was an experience to go there. But it was definitely better than nothing. And the coffee was actually quite good, so at least that. Of course, while we were drinking coffee, we were making notes of all the other fuck-ups that happened to us, because since our shisha the day before in the afternoon, we had like 10 other experiences we needed to note down. And I'm not even telling you all the fuck-ups that happened to us, because this podcast would take like 3 hours. And I already said it way too many times to repeat all of that again. So I'm just keeping it down to the most important fuck-ups and most important events. So after the coffee, we finally went home. We had a nice walk. We talked. It was great. Then we had lunch from Lidl as the day before, and we just were chilling for like 4 hours before we decided to go for another walk to the center, which was again like 60 minutes away from our accommodation. So quite a long walk again, and we went to see the most famous houses, Casa. Oh, I cannot remember the name now, but Casa Milan. Like, if you check Google Maps, you can see all the casas in Barcelona that are there, and I would say again that they are worth seeing. Anyway, we were pretty drained when we finally got to the center, and like thirsty and tired, and to be honest, I was a bit irritated by the people everywhere. I really hate crowds, and I know that's what I should expect when I go to the city center, and especially in Barcelona in July in the high season. But still, I was irritated and I wanted to go home, but I didn't want to go home on foot again because I was so tired. Like by then, I think we already had like 25 or more thousand steps in, and the way back was again at least 60 minutes on foot. So we decided we would go back by subway. But unfortunately, another fuck up is that we only carry like our phones and our watches, and we pay with our phones and with our watches. We don't use our physical credit cards or debit cards, and we unfortunately found out that you cannot purchase a ticket without a card or cash. The machines just simply don't accept contactless paying, so we couldn't buy the ticket. So instead we decided, okay, let's stick to our original plan, which was to get a bumbo nambo at an Asian restaurant probably, and just like chill for an hour or two, and then we're gonna go home. And it was a great idea because again we had wonderful conversations, we laughed a lot. We actually ordered drinks that were like not what we ordered actually, because I ordered Aperol and it didn't taste like Aperol. Actually there wasn't Prosecco, there was Cava, which is Spanish wine, and they put way too much alcohol in it. So when I took a sip, I just couldn't stand it. So Daya definitely was in a great mood after finishing that drink, let me tell you. And I actually ordered passion fruit water, and I expected water since it was called passion fruit water, but actually it turned out to be a juice, like a juice, no water. And when I took my first sip, I didn't expect it to be a juice. So again, I was a bit shocked, but it wasn't that bad actually. So I finished the drink as well, but again, like I really don't like it when you order something and it's nowhere near what you expected. But anyway, on our walk back, we had an amazing time again. But the next day, I woke up super tired, and since I was on my period and we had a lot of exercise and the heat and everything, I felt like my head and my stomach is gonna explode. So I told Daya that I'm just gonna stay in my room and just like chill and work a bit, but I didn't feel in condition to go for another long walk to the center. So we decided to have a day to ourselves. So Daya head out to go and see Sagrada La Familia, which I was not that interested in actually. And I stayed in my room, and luckily the painkillers played their role and I started feeling a bit better after a few hours. And I decided that I would go for a solo date, for a lunch, for a ramen. But I was so hungry since the morning, like extreme. I was like starving even though I had breakfast, that I just couldn't wait until 12:30 for the lunch, because 12:30 was when they were supposed to open. So I finished my leftover pizza from the day before, that was in the fridge, or actually from 2 days before. So it was high time. It was about time to eat it. And after eating it, of course, I felt satisfied and I was not hungry anymore. So I thought that instead of going for ramen right now, I would go, let's say, at 3 p.m. and I would just go for a stroll. And I did. I explored some new streets. I was on the phone with my husband. Yeah, I listened to some voice messages on my WhatsApp. I recorded a few voice messages back. And yeah, I ended up walking for like 1 hour. And I actually walked past Aldi, which is a supermarket. And I was like, yeah, I might take a peek, like let's see what they actually sell in Aldi. So I went in, and I don't know if you know, but I'm a huge sucker for potatoes. Like, potatoes are my life. I love potatoes and I eat potatoes every day. It sounds super funny, but like, if you want to cook anything for me, just cook potatoes and I'm gonna be thrilled. So when I saw potatoes in Aldi for a microwave, I was like, I'm really craving potatoes. And actually in our accommodation, we had a microwave, not in our room, but there was a common room for everybody in that hotel or in that residence with a microwave that anyone could use. But I was like, nah, I don't have anything to have with the potatoes, and I really want to get the ramen later, so I'm just gonna leave it there, and I'm gonna have potatoes when I come home, which was supposed to be the next day. But suddenly I saw a chicken thighs, like chicken drums, you know, it looked like the chicken drums from KFC, and I love chicken drums from KFC. In general, I love chicken, and from time to time I love fried chicken. And I thought that this could be the perfect lunch and dinner and breakfast, because it was a huge package. Plus the potatoes were also in a huge package. So I actually decided to buy the chicken and buy the potatoes instead of getting the ramen. But then I realized that I cannot eat the potatoes without salt. But they didn't have like a small portion of salt. They had just like 1 kilo package, huge package. But there was no alternative. So I was like, okay, so I might as well buy the package because I cannot eat potatoes without salt. And I also ended up buying a plate because we didn't have any plates in we didn't have a kitchen in our room. So all we had was spoons that we took from home and one fork that I stole from the breakfast area, but the breakfast area is of course opened only during breakfast, so I couldn't go there to get a knife, and they actually didn't even have knives. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna eat the chicken and the potatoes with a spoon and with a fork, but I need to get a plate because I cannot eat it like straight from the package. That would feel disgusting. So I bought all of that and I went home super excited, but still a bit disappointed that I'm not gonna get the ramen that I was really craving. But I was like, you know, like, you've got the chicken and you've got the potatoes already and you've got to finish it. You don't want to leave it here because I really hate wasting food, and I was feeling really guilty about the salt already. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have that. So I went to the microwave and I expected it to take 7 minutes, but since it was like a shared microwave in the hallway, I had to stand there next to it and just wait. But it unfortunately didn't take 7 minutes, it took 15 minutes, so it felt like an eternity until the potatoes were finally done. And then I went to my room, excited to have my potatoes and the chicken. So I open up the chicken I take a huge bite, and I realize that there's something off. Something just didn't feel right. And you know what? The chicken drums, the 600 grams of chicken drums that I've just bought was raw chicken. I took a bite in a raw chicken, so I immediately felt disgusted. I felt confused. For a minute I couldn't believe it, that it's actually raw. And I can tell if a chicken drum is raw or not, but this really looked like fried chicken from KFC, so I didn't see the meat before I actually took a bite, so don't judge me, please. But I was so disappointed and so annoyed that I've just bought a raw chicken that I cannot do anything with, because there wasn't a place in that hotel where I could just go and use the oven or whatever, and really I was not ready to microwave a chicken. I would be afraid of getting salmonella or anything. So I really had no choice but to leave the chicken there in the fridge and not eat it. But I already had the potatoes and the salt, so I was like, oh no, I cannot throw the potatoes away with the salt. So I decided to go back to Aldi and to get cooked meat. But unfortunately, everything they had there was raw. So I decided to buy ham, but I don't like ham that much. So I also needed to buy ketchup, because with ketchup I could imagine eating the ham, but without the ketchup I couldn't imagine eating it. So I had to buy a ketchup and a ham. I came back home and I ate it, but it wasn't good. It was the kind of food that actually fills you, it can fill your stomach, but you don't feel satisfied after. And I was still craving something tasty. So I was I need to go to a cafe or something and at least get some croissant or other type of pastry, just to satisfy my taste buds. And I open Google Maps and I see there's a place 1 minute away from our hotel, and I was like, wow, cool. And I open it and I see it's actually a store or a restaurant even, where they only sell fried chicken and baked potatoes. All this time I could have just gone to that restaurant and get a perfect fried chicken with perfect fried potatoes, and I didn't have to go to Aldi and do everything myself and end up throwing everything away. But that's typical for me. Okay, so there are many more fuck-ups that I could share with you from our last day, but I feel like this podcast is already way too long, so I'm just gonna say that the next day we took a taxi to the airport, because I was not willing to risk going by public transport and getting lost somewhere, because with our luck we couldn't risk anything. So we had a head start going to the airport, and we actually ended up waiting at the airport for an hour and a half, but that was okay, because at least we were not stressed and nothing went wrong, which was surprising. Actually, the flight back was not really comfortable, because during the last 30 minutes there were really terrible turbulences, but we managed to land safely, so everything was amazing. And I felt so tired for the rest of the week. I actually had to take a nap every day and I still felt like a walking dead. So this holiday was energy draining but amazing. I have so many great memories from it. So many fuck-ups I can tell to people to make them laugh, which is wonderful. I hope you did enjoy listening to this podcast and that I made you laugh a little bit. Please, if you managed to listen up to this point, let me know in the comments or text me a message on Instagram. I would be thrilled. So have a nice rest of the day, and wherever you go on holiday, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.